Why are we beings that tell these stories of the struggles of heroes, and why do they move us so much? What is the universe communicating in the desire we have to tell these stories? Most likely it's because when a dragon is faced or a dark forest stepped into, when that long, difficult path that seems never ending is taken, it speaks to our own path to awakening in our own lives.
Myths cross-culturally all have this archetypal hero's journey within it, which is a metaphor for our own maturing and growth, and our leaving of our home and facing new challenges in the unknown, being confronted by dragons and all kinds of things, but then on the other side of that, receiving treasures and bringing those treasures back and bringing that gift to others.
I think the hero's journey metaphor is quite cool for what happens on the SES. That there is this call to action that is like, okay, stepping into something new. And then there was certainly a lot of trials and tribulations for me of just like, oh, what is this and what am I? And I don't want to be angry, but I'm angry, and how do I bring that, and can I bring it? And like so many struggles.
This is an adventure. You are going to get tested on these 6 months. Like, it's not just come along and we take you through ABC. Like, you're invited into leadership from day one. And in that surrender leadership space, stuff's going to come up for you that's going to be like, your demons are going to show up. And we think you can handle it.
Looking in the singular moments, most of the time I definitely wasn't happy. I was or in fear or in sadness or in collapse throughout significant amount of time. It feels like a jump into a deep water. It's definitely stretching out my awareness, stretching out the sense of what I am and who I am. So I try to surrender to it, I try to trust it. So I can remember the first and the second weekend. I would be, I think every day just waking up and asking myself, like, why am I here? Like, why I just don't pack and leave. I really don't feel like going out of the room.
This anger is again with you.
I want to express that I have a hard time being with, like, just letting you explore this place. Like, I really want you to get out because this place is so familiar to me. And I just hate it. So it's really hard to just stay. And I don't want to take the experience away from you, so I just wanted to say that. Yeah, the biggest challenge was revealing my fear. That's like the last thing I want to do, is to like tell somebody I'm scared because I feel unsafe already.
Until there's some kind of surrender to like, okay, I'm just going to fucking do it. And then that, like, the death and rebirth part of like, okay, this thing that I thought make everyone leave me actually created connection. It actually made people like me more or want to be with me more. Oh wow, I can be here with more of me.
What more exciting a way to perceive life than like that, like you're in an amazing movie, like a hero's movie, like. And obviously it's not easy to perceive life like that the whole time. But when you're not, you could still see that as a place in your hero's journey, as a support system to deal with the tragedies of life and the incomprehensible problems that we face, but also incomprehensible joys and gifts that we get to experience.
I feel relief. I wonder if this is right. I don't feel this anger anymore.
The third weekend was landed in more open space. It was more fun. Part of me wanted to work through it and to actually face it. And part of me apparently finds myself worth and lovable enough to make it happen.
Yeah, and then taking that home as a treasure, and then like being changed by the journey also. So there's this like home is not home in the same way anymore, because these other people don't understand what I've been through and that I'm different now somehow.
It definitely felt like I went on a journey, and it's been amazing, and it's been horrible, and it's been terrifying, and it's been joyous. What was home when I started the education is not home anymore, that's for sure. It feels like it comes back to integrity for me. This whole circling journey is like by resonating myself with other people and with the world and with whatever is inside of me right now. I've come closer to integrity, and that has given me so much, and it has also cost me everything that wasn't in alignment. And I see that that's how it's going to continuously unfold. So it's like, am I willing to let go what is not serving who I am anymore?
About halfway into my own hero's journey on this training, I realized that parts of my own self-image were starting to actually not serve me anymore. Up until this point in my life, I had done quite a few years of work on myself through many different modalities. But through this practice, I actually got quite surprised at the level of masquerading I was still doing. The way I was still often just habitually reacting to the world, instead of slowing down enough to let what was actually going on inside me come to the surface. But as so many times before, this was not an experience I was alone with.
I think I got quite frightened when I first realized the full extent of this sense that I might not know where I'm fully coming from when I'm speaking, or I might be feeling something and be speaking something that's actually in opposition or isn't connected fully. And then that might sound like, oh, okay, so just discover it, but it's not. Like when you really start to feel into more of what's here and the subtleties and question if you really know what's there, it seems to bring up an uncertainty or a vulnerability that like you don't know yourself, and you can be discovered to be like not really in your truth. And it's a pretty intense experience actually, and especially because you could have been interacting with people and in your business or your family or your loved ones from a place of like, yeah, this is me. And then you explore deeper and you realize that it wasn't fully true. And now suddenly you've got everything's changed. And that's quite an intense experience. It certainly was for me.
What happened to me during the SAS was a feeling of acknowledging all that I already have and already am, and becoming aware that how I am moving in the world is my responsibility. And then the context of the SAS, it's a playground to become aware that whatever playground I'm in, I'm the one in charge. Taking responsibility and surrendering at the same time to what is here. Kind of like standing with that knowledge from having slayed dragons and from having laughed and from having cried and had tough and beautiful and everything in between kind of experiences. Like standing with the knowledge that the surrender is mine and the responsibility is mine. And feeling like the circling education kind of taught me or showed me a way to bridge it. And then I had to do the sewing together of those two terms somehow.
And then once in a while I go on a new hero's journey. So it's like, it's not one, there's like several of them. And meeting new trials and tribulations and dying in new ways and then bringing something new back in.
Coming out of the container where all of the context are removed somehow, and where we're just with the present and coming into, I don't know, going to the supermarket or being with family or friends that are not in the practice. It can seem like, we're not, like this is not important, we're not accessing anything that is unknown to us. So like recognizing, it makes me really frustrated to be in this world that is without the bubble of the practice. But also recognizing that by resisting the world as it is, I'm not bringing the practice into life. So I think a part of me was surprised that it became a journey like it became. It felt like I had an idea when I signed up about what would happen, and I also see that it took a lot of me, and now I see how much it gave me. So it feels like the hero's journey is a repeated thing after the SAS. Like you go on that journey, and it feels nice to have that kind of framework to kind of be, oh, okay, I heard the call, I paid the money, and now I'm packed my bags and I'm going on the first dive. And then you come back and you're like, okay, now I'm not alone anymore on this journey, and we're all here. And then there's the peak. And the peak can also be a lack of peak, or the feeling of like not getting anywhere, or like not breaking through as I wanted to, like not, like where the fuck is this dragon? So it feels like a nice framework for stepping on the train. But it also feels like it's a part of stepping on to a journey like that. It's like you don't know where you're gonna end. So are you willing to not know?
The third principle is an invitation to increase your level of commitment, to stay in connection with whatever is arising between you and other people. This often means remaining in connection while feeling resistance or impulses to break it.
That is like something difficult is happening. Can we stay in together?
I can go into collapse if I want and shut down, or there's a choice to kind of try to stay here and connect.
This principle also involves revealing yourself to the other, staying in what is happening in the relationship and in the connection in each moment.
I think it's putting words to my feelings or what I'm experiencing, and also being open to the reaction or what's happening in the other person when I say this. That's a way of still being in contact with me and with the other. So I'm not just going away, I'm having the impulse to go away, I put words to that, and I listen to what that means for the other, and then I'm kind of inviting the other. We're still in contact, so.
This can also build your capacity to stay with increasing sensations in yourself and to notice where you move away from what is actually happening for you, perhaps in order to move away from discomfort. And through that, you gain the space to feel and express what is really true for you and discover new meaning in feelings long avoided.
And then there's also an aspect of that is like, well, do we always have to stay with the difficult thing? If something difficult happens in the circle, do we have to address it? Do we need to stay with that? Because that might also mean a disconnect or turning away from myself. If I feel that I have to do something. It's about finding the correct distance for where we can be with love for each other. Honoring that I don't have to stay, but I can move over here if that's what I need to stay open to you. Commitment can sound as if I need to do something particular, but what I'm committing to is the connection. And what does the connection need? Maybe it needs distance.
Yeah, how can I be true to myself and still be in connection if my truth is that I'm wanting to avoid you or go away?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of complexity in that one as well.
It's never just a straight answer.
No.
A big part of what makes Circling Europe different from the other schools is the practice of surrendered leadership. This is the version of circling that I experienced in that very first circle back in Sweden. The practice of surrendered leadership is seen as the next stage in development. A practice that, in a sense, both transcends and includes circling. It is a leadership that takes the principles deeper into embodiment by making sure leadership is always grounded in surrender.
We do a lot of circling in groups, and we call that surrendered leadership. And why we call it that is because the usual experience we have in groups is like, who's a leader? And it can be conflict about who's a leader. But actually, what we're learning is to lead from surrender. And surrender is not your like white flag, like I give up and I've been defeated. It's that, okay, what's here? To really surrender, you have to know what's here. So that's that process of presence. But when you discover what's here, the surrender is, can you step into like really being what the truth is? Leading yourself from surrender. That kind of leadership's really different to a lot of other leadership. So if I'm with a group of 6 people, what you'll usually see is people have like ways they've learned, like they could have been in a family where you got to pay attention to everyone. So you're in the group and you're like trying to listen to everyone. But actually when you pay attention, you don't actually want that. You actually are drawn to 2 people. And that's where most of your real attention goes to, but you override that from this like, okay, to be a good person and good leader, I've got to listen to everyone, which actually will be probably very counterproductive for you.
I get a sense of like that I'm distracting myself by looking around and wondering if this leads nowhere, then I'm taking up your guys' time. I don't really want to attempt it. I'm just trying to connect with you when I feel rejected.
Or you had the opposite experience where in your family, what you said didn't matter to anyone or they wouldn't listen. So then you're in the group and you don't know why you do it, but you don't say anything. And you're kind of there and then you're kind of pissed off or like, what am I doing here? But actually that was your experience growing up. And then you get a chance to get in touch with that. And with this meditation and the way people can be with you to support you being in that, you can discover like, oh yeah, the pain that came from being like ignored or not encouraged is quite something to get in touch with.
Share more. It's being rejected, isn't it?
I think it's the experience is something like it's about resonating a lot with what it is that's going on in my body, and I'm trying to be part of the conversation and just being ignored. I know it's hard to look.
It's hard to look.
And when you can do that in a way that feels supportive, actually that can liberate often the anger or the passion you have to actually speak. It's like, that's your truth. You've got something to contribute. And then when you realize that and you start to dare to bring it and you're tentative, but then you find that, little by little, you just share your truth and people actually respond.
I was talking to you and you just ignored me.
You're looking now. You opened your eyes.
Yeah. No, you didn't hear me.
What's it like?
It's very confusing. It's like I'm in another reality or something. Do you feel I'm still ignoring? I feel scared because I was talking to you and it seems like you didn't hear me at all.
What's the fear now?
I think it's maybe some experience of like reality breaking down or something like that.
I notice I feel very numb, and it's like speaking, it's like I have to cut through a very thick wall of something. It's like a collapse or freeze, or I'm not sure. It's like, it feels a bit relieving to speak.
I feel more alive hearing you speak.
I feel my heart when you share.
What did you say?
I feel my heart when you share.
So it's again a dojo for this like collective intelligence to be able to be in a group, and how you do it well is actually to learn to be actually more yourself. But what you'll discover is the more you are yourself, you're much more than you ever realized.
I feel like I'm not following. I also really have a hard time hearing what is being said.
Yeah, I was visiting this place that's related to just everything being built back inside of me, I think maybe in my family or something. And then, there is a lot of, it's this judgment, like if I speak, no one will hear me, like nobody can, it doesn't even make sense to try to connect, because it's just not possible. And it came from this experience of being ignored when I was speaking from my heart. Also just appreciating being with that sadness, because often when I feel it on my own, it's too much. Like I can't stay with it. So I was also just enjoying just being able to breathe and just being there and crying. Yeah, I think the feeling for me is something about if I can sit in this, then I don't have to be so scared when it happens. So like building strength or building capacity or any places in myself that I'm afraid of where I collapse.
In this version of the practice, we're feeling the influence of our need to be seen and fit in, and also our desire to be an individual. But we're not acting from them unconsciously. Instead, we feel the different perceptions, feelings, and conceptual understandings and hold them in a deeper unknown to allow more space for something new to emerge. It means that we're open to the continual flux of experience as it unfolds in each moment. More intimate with ourselves and the group. It's probably not a surprise that surrendered leadership is where I struggle the most, as this is where we really journey into the unknown. And as I touched on earlier, going through the different phases of my own hero's journey, I had periods where I doubted this practice, where I was even annoyed by it, where it seemed too simple, too intellectual, too navel-gazing and self-centered. I had periods where I wanted it to be more complicated. I wanted proper rules and regulations and not just principles. What I actually wanted was the illusion of control, because that wildness and the uncertainty of the practice could be uncomfortable. But as I slowly got better at surrendering to all of this, I started understanding the healing powers inherent in this wildness, what they in Quechua, the language of the Andes, call salka, the undomesticated energy that brings us into contact with the great mystery and beauty of existence. So out of my surrender came my salka. That was my first big gift from the practice. And from there on, I could more easily see all the ways that we are holding ourselves back.
Making myself wrong is a very common thing in one way or the other. It can be fear. That, like, I'm really, really scared of bringing this part of myself because I think that if I bring it, then you will leave me. It can be I'm really afraid of hurting you. So I don't want to bring this part of me because I think it's destructive or cruel.
I'm not allowed to enjoy myself. Like I'm not allowed to have pleasure in life. So it seems like there is part of me which holds to that belief, and probably also some shame around owning that, oh yeah, actually I do right now.
I think intimacy, like the sense of being intimate with myself, not turning away from myself, was a term I heard recently and quite liked. It's like there's an impact on me, and what I quite often do is to turn away from it by slightly making the impact wrong in various ways. So there's like, how can I turn towards myself and just allow myself that I'm impacted by what is happening? That feels quite important. And it's very clear for me that I can't be intimate with you if I'm not intimate with myself. That is not possible. And that causes a lot of pain in the world.
And to be really intimate with ourselves and through that stop holding ourselves back, we need to know what it is we actually want from situation to situation and from life.
What are we longing for? Not what I want, but what do I yearn for? Like, what do I really deep down want for myself or for the world in this life? And it feels like the circling practice is also a place to explore some of the deepest longings that we are encoded with from just existing, of connection and love and togetherness and excitement.
I lived too long not really listening enough to my needs and feelings, too many years, so that I kind of lost touch with them in a sense.
We have so many patterns that are kind of manifesting things in our life that aren't great, that once we actually see how we were participating in the very creation of that, we can make different choices. And we can start to feel more and more like this empowerment of like, we can be more in the driver's seat of our own life, ironically and paradoxically, by letting go more and more and more. Less victim to the outside world and more able to create and manifest the life that you want. I can learn to own my experience more. I can like really feel what's happening, and rather than making an assessment about reality, like what do I just know is true here in my reality? And like that's a practice to speak from that place.
Because we're relating around this, sitting at meetings with colleagues, nobody talking about what actually is there, or being in a relationship and not have the courage to share what's actually happening inside of you, rather just managing.
The question of what do I need to bring, or like what should I bring in circling? One answer seems to be, well, what stands in the way of me being fully here? If I can't be here, then I kind of need to bring what stands in the way so I can be here with you.
There's this thing that happens that's very surprising. It still surprises me after 15 years. Because I'm paying attention and practicing communicating, I start to realize, oh, I'm actually feeling quite a lot of shame. Oh, I'm going to share this because it's part of the practice. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Like this, people aren't going to like this. And it's almost your whole body's in this, like, I can't do this. And then you share it. And you're like, oh, I'm feeling a lot of shame. Like, I don't feel worthy even to be here. And people are like, oh, that's so relaxing to hear. Well, I feel closer to you now. And you're like, what? But it feels good to hear that as well. And it actually helps that feeling to actually become more integrated, actually. And we start to realize that these are actually very human experiences that people can really connect to. And in connecting to it, it feels actually intimate and freeing, because it's like, this has actually been there all along. And now it's suddenly okay to be there. There's like a relaxation.
Like the willingness to be vulnerable and exposed. And it feels like the transparency in the circling practice. It's invited in alongside with a straight spine and a trusting that I hold myself. And I think that's the range of the circling practice. And when it's in its full potential, it's like being with what is so delicate, but also recognizing the depth and the strength that needs to be present for that delicacy to present itself to the lived experience.
By being with people in that way of like trusting and seeing clearly and checking what's really there and reflecting what's coming up, so much can open and so much trust can be built when you see that, oh wow, this is an innocent human being kind of doing their best and they've got all the neuroses that I have, and like I can relate. There's a shared humanity here, and there's a beauty, and I can feel their heart. And I can't think of anything more beautiful to do with my time.
There's a really, I think it's quite an ancient saying, and it was something like, a soul only knows fully it's a soul when it meets another soul. By being in touch with our soul or a more fundamental layer of us, we can see that layer in someone else. And by doing that, they will see it in themselves, and realizing that it's very fulfilling. Like you're really realizing the depth of you. So it's really, it can be like a kind of revelation.
Yeah, like I will see somebody cry and it's okay. Like I don't need to fix it. Like when you had your thing earlier in the circle where you were crying and shaking, and when I see that you can be like this, then it allows for me to also accept that in me. It allows playfulness, it allows humor. Yeah, the whole human being can be present. Like when you expressed to me in the circle today that you felt more love for me than you feel for some people that you've known for 10 years. I could really sit with it and take it in, and I could feel it land in my heart. And I knew that it was like 18 people witnessing. And it was just like a nice feeling. While had that happened at my kitchen table, I maybe would have felt very uncomfortable because other people might not understand what was happening, or like I would feel much more, yeah, like have this guard up that doesn't need to be here. Like we're allowed to, invited to speak from that place with no, behind the masks and behind the defenses.
When you start to connect to the deeper sense of truth, it's amazing how you can like lead your life if you actually have that information. So you don't need to think of it too overly fluffy. It's like, it's really real. It's like I am sensing and feeling and speaking from what I know to be most true. How that can then make things way easier.
How rich that can make life, and how loving that can make life, and how exhilarating and how appreciative we can be of the simple things, and how awe can be more present in life.